Arriving at my home after 2 weeks away, my daughter-in-law greeted me by shouting from the living room as if I were a stranger. "What is this witch doing here? Get out of my house now." Her words hit me harder than anything I had ever felt before. She was pointing her finger at me on my own property, in the house I bought with my own sweat, with my hands cracked from scrubbing other people's floors. I just slipped my bag off my shoulders, walked in with firm steps, and answered, looking her directly in the eyes. "This house is mine, not your personal dump." I showed her the way to the door. My son, Matthew, did not even try to stop me. He just stood there, his gaze lowered, like a coward. And in that moment, I knew that what was coming next, neither of them would ever forget. But to understand how I got to that point, I have to tell you who I am. My name is Margaret Adler, and I am 72 years old. All my life, I worked cleaning other people's houses, taking care of children who were not mine, ironing clothes for people who never even knew my last name. I never complained. I never begged. I never held out my hand expecting anyone to give me anything. Every dollar I earned, I saved with discipline. Every cent I saved was with the thought of having my own roof, a place where no one could tell me what to do or how to live. And I did it. I bought this house 20 years ago, when I still had the strength to work double shifts and my knees did not ache so much. It is small, yes. It has 2 bedrooms, a modest living room, a kitchen that smells like coffee every morning, and a small yard where I grow my plants. But it is mine, only mine. I have lived alone since my husband died almost 15 years ago. Matthew, my only son, got married and left. I never asked him to stay. Children grow up and fly the coop. That is natural. But I always thought he would at least respect me, that he would remember everything I did for him. The nights I stayed up late, sewing clothes to sell so I could pay for his school. The times I ate less so he could eat more. The sacrifices a mother makes in silence, without expecting medals or applause. I lived peacefully. My routine was simple but dignified. I would get up early, make my coffee, water the plants, sweep the patio. Sometimes my friend Carol Peterson, a good woman who lives 3 houses down, would come over. We would sit in the kitchen drinking coffee and talking about life, about memories, about nothing and everything. She is one of those friends who does not judge, who does not criticize, who is just there when you need her. Carol is my age, maybe a year younger. She was widowed too, but she had better luck with her children. They visit her every week, take her to the grocery store, ask her how she is. I never felt envious of that. I just felt something like sadness when I saw how little Matthew cared about me. He would call once a month, if that. And when he did, it was just to ask if I was okay, but without really waiting for an answer. Everything changed when my sister Helen called me from another state. She was sick, very sick. She needed someone to take care of her because she could not move on her own. Her children lived far away, in another country, and could not come. So she called me. And of course, I went. Because that is what you do when family needs you. You drop everything and go. I told Matthew I would be gone for 2 weeks. He told me not to worry, that the house would be fine. I trusted him. I locked everything up, left the plants watered, said goodbye to Carol, and took the bus to the city where Helen lives. Those were 2 long weeks. My sister was suffering a lot. I slept little, cooked for her, bathed her, gave her medicine. I did not complain. It was my duty. But deep down, I missed my house. I missed my bed, my kitchen, my plants, the silence of my yard. I counted the days until I could return. And when the time finally came to go back, I felt happy. I took the bus back with a light heart, thinking about getting home, making a good pot of coffee, and resting in my armchair. I never imagined what was waiting for me. When I got off the bus and walked toward my street, something seemed strange. There was a car parked in front of my house, a car I did not recognize. I thought maybe it was a neighbor visiting someone. But as I got closer, I saw it was right in front of my door. I took out my keys slowly, my heart starting to beat faster. Something was not right. I opened the door, and the first thing I felt was the smell. It was not the smell of my house. It was a sweet, cloying perfume that I did not use. The lights were on. There were shoes in the entryway. women's shoes that were not mine. I stood there, my bag hanging from my shoulder, trying to understand what was happening. I walked slowly toward the living room, and there he was, Matthew, my son, sitting in my armchair, watching television as if nothing was wrong. He turned around when he heard me come in and looked at me with an expression I could not decipher. It was not surprise. It was not joy. It was something like discomfort. "Mom," he said softly, "I was not expecting you today." "What do you mean you were not expecting me?" I replied. "I told you I was coming back today." "What is going on here, Matthew?" He did not answer. He just got up and scratched the back of his neck, nervous. And then I heard it. A woman's voice coming from my bedroom. My bedroom. The most sacred place in my house. The one space that had always been just mine. "Who is it, Matthew? Is that old hag gone yet?" I felt the floor move beneath my feet. I walked to my room and opened the door without knocking. And there she was, Jessica, my son's wife, sitting on my bed, with her clothes thrown over my sheets, her creams and perfumes on my dresser, her shoes under my window. She looked at me as if I were the intruder. "What is this witch doing here? Get out of my house now." Those were her words. Exact. And she yelled them at me, pointing her finger as if I were trash, as if I were nothing. I could not move for a few seconds. I just stood there in the doorway of my own bedroom, looking at this woman yelling at me as if I were a stranger. Jessica was lounging on my bed, her legs crossed, painting her nails a bright red color that was staining my white sheets. My sheets. The ones I had washed and hung in the sun before I left. "Did you hear me?" I said, "Get out of here. This is my house now." Her voice was sharp, full of venom. But what hurt me the most was not her words. It was seeing Matthew standing behind me, saying nothing, not defending me, not even trying to silence her. He just stared at the floor like a scolded child, his hands in his pockets. "Matthew," I said, without taking my eyes off her, "are you going to explain what this means?" He swallowed and cleared his throat. "Mom, it is just. We needed a place to stay. Just for a few days. The apartment where we were living. We had problems with the landlord. He asked us to leave. I thought since you were not here, we could stay here until we found something." "Until you found something?" I repeated slowly, feeling the anger start to rise from my stomach to my throat. "And it did not occur to you to call me? To ask for my permission?" "We just did not want to bother you," he mumbled. "We knew you were busy with Aunt Helen." Jessica let out a dry, scornful laugh. "Oh, please. You do not have to give her explanations, Matthew. This house is empty most of the time. What difference does it make if we use it?" I felt something inside me break. It was not an explosion. It was something deeper, like a silent crack opening in the center of my chest. I walked slowly to the dresser and saw all her things there. Her expensive creams, her imported perfumes, her makeup scattered across the wood I had cared for years. I opened the closet and saw her clothes hanging next to mine. Dresses, blouses, shoes thrown in the bottom. Everything mixed together as if she had a right to be there. I turned and looked at her steadily. She was still painting her nails, as if none of this mattered to her. As if I did not exist. "This house is mine," I said, my voice firm but calm. "I bought it with my work, with my sweat, with years of sacrifice. And you have no right to be here without my permission." She looked up and stared at me with a mocking smile. "Oh, really? And what are you going to do? Kick me out?" "Please, lady, I am your son's wife. We are family. You should be happy to help us." I did not move. I just watched her in silence, feeling how each of her words stabbed into me like tiny needles. But I was not going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I was not going to shout. I was not going to beg her to leave. Because I knew that in that moment, if I lost control, she would win. I took a deep breath and turned to Matthew. "I want you to get your things out of my bedroom. Right now." "Mom, please," he said in a weak voice. "Just let us stay a few more days." "I promise I will." "I do not care what you promise," I interrupted him. "I want you to get everything out of here. This is my house, and if you are going to stay, it will be under my rules. But my room is mine. No one sleeps there except me." Jessica got off the bed with a sharp movement. Your rules? Who do you think you are? We are here because Matthew is your son. You have an obligation to help us. I have no obligation to you, I replied, looking her straight in the eye. And if you think I am going to let you disrespect me in my own house, you are very mistaken. She took a step toward me, her arms crossed, and that look of superiority that made me sick. Matthew did nothing. He just stood there, like a useless shadow. And in that moment, I understood something I had never wanted to accept. My son was not the man I thought I had raised. He was a coward. A man with no backbone who let his wife humiliate me without lifting a finger. Fine, I said finally. Stay. But get your things out of my bedroom right now. Or I will. Jessica laughed in my face. You are not going to do anything, lady, because if you do, Matthew will have to choose. And believe me, he is not going to choose you. Her words hurt more than I could have imagined. Because I knew she was right. Matthew was not going to defend me. He was not going to put her in her place. He was not going to do anything. And that was the saddest part of all. I left the bedroom without another word. I walked to the kitchen with my legs trembling and my heart pounding in my chest. I sat down in one of the chairs and just stayed there, staring at the table, trying to breathe. I felt that everything I had built, everything I had cared for over the years, was being invaded by someone who did not deserve to be there. I heard their voices from the room. Jessica was yelling at Matthew, telling him I was a bitter old woman, that I had no right to treat her like that he had to put me in my place. And he said nothing. He just listened to her. He just obeyed like a dog. I got up and started walking through the house. I needed to see everything. I needed to understand how far they had gone. I opened the kitchen cabinet and saw that my dishes were mixed with others I did not recognize. Cheap plastic plates she had brought. In the refrigerator, there was food I did not buy. Drinks, sauces, things I never used. Everything was jumbled, disorganized, as if someone had come in to ransack my life. I went to the bathroom and saw her products there too. Expensive shampoos, conditioners, body lotions, all taking up the space where I kept my things. I opened the cabinet, and my towels were thrown in the bottom, wrinkled, while hers were folded and arranged on the top shelf. I felt a cold fury run through my body. It was not an explosive rage. It was something worse. It was a deep, silent indignation that made me clench my teeth and ball my fists. But I was not going to shout. I was not going to beg. I was not going to plead for them to leave. Because I knew that was exactly what she wanted. She wanted to see me weak. She wanted to see me broken. I went back to the living room and sat in my armchair. Matthew came out of the room with a tired look on his face that did not stir any pity in me. He sat across from me and tried to speak. Mom, I do not want to hear it, I said without looking at him. I do not want your excuses. I just want to know one thing. How long were you planning to stay here without telling me? He looked down. I do not know. A couple of weeks. Maybe. Until we got money for another place. And then what? Were you going to disappear without letting me know? Were you going to let me come back and find my house empty, as if nothing had happened? It is not like that, Mom. I was going to talk to you. I swear. Your oaths are worthless, Matthew. Because if they were worth anything, you would not be here now. You would not have allowed that woman to talk to me like that. You would not have let her disrespect me in my own house. He did not answer. He just sat there, his hands between his legs, staring at the floor as if searching for something to say but could not find it, and I watched him in silence, feeling how the mother's love I always had for him was beginning to mix with something darker. Disappointment, sadness, contained rage. Fine, I said finally. Stay. But this is my house. And here, my rules are respected. Understood? He nodded without looking up. That first night, I could not sleep. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of my own house that now felt strange. I could hear their voices from the other side of the wall. Jessica was talking loudly, not caring if I heard her. She was laughing, making derogatory comments, and Matthew said nothing to quiet her. He just mumbled things I could not make out. I got up early, as always. I made my coffee in silence, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy. But when I opened the cupboard to get my favorite mug, it was not there. I looked for it in the sink, in the drying rack, and found it thrown in the dishwasher, dirty, with lipstick stains on the rim. Jessica had used it. I felt something hot rise in my chest. It was not just a mug. It was my mug, the one I had used every morning for years, the one my husband gave me for our anniversary. And she had used it without asking, without care, as if everything that was mine was also hers. I washed it carefully, breathing deeply, trying to calm down. But every second that passed, it became harder to control what I was feeling. I made my coffee and sat at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the yard. My plants were still there, but they looked neglected. No one had watered them in 2 weeks. The leaves were dry, some fallen on the dirt. I went out to the yard and began to water them one by one. It was the only thing that calmed me in that moment. Feeling the soil between my fingers, watching the water soak the roots, taking care of something that depended on me. While I was doing it, I heard the door to their room open. Jessica came out in a robe, her hair loose, yawning as if she owned the place. She walked into the kitchen without greeting me. She opened the refrigerator and took out the carton of milk I had bought before I left. She poured herself a glass without asking and drank it, standing there, watching me through the window with an annoyed expression. "Do you always get up this early?" she asked in a mocking tone. "You make noise. You do not let me sleep." I did not answer her. I kept watering my plants, ignoring her, but she was not willing to leave me in peace. "Besides, this house is freezing. I do not know how you can live like this." "Matthew," she yelled toward the room, "you have to fix the heat. It is freezing in here." Matthew came out too, looking like he had just woken up, and went straight to the kitchen for coffee. He glanced at me but said nothing. He just prepared his mug and sat at the table, avoiding my gaze. I came in from the yard and sat across from him. Jessica remained standing by the sink, arms crossed, watching us as if waiting for me to do something she could use against me. "Matthew," I said calmly, "we need to talk." He nodded without looking up from his mug. "Yeah, Mom. How much money do you have saved to find another place?" He was quiet for a few seconds, stirring his coffee with the spoon unnecessarily. "Well, not much. We are a little tight right now." "How much?" I insisted. "I do not know. About $200. "Maybe," Jessica snorted. "And what are we going to do with that? That is not even enough for a security deposit on an apartment. You know what the rents are like these days, lady. Everything is outrageously expensive." "I did not ask for your opinion," I replied without looking at her. "I am talking to my son." She laughed sarcastically. "Oh, right. Because he is your perfect little boy, is not he? Well, let me tell you something, lady. Your perfect little boy does not have a stable job. And if it were not for me, he would be sleeping on the street." I felt my blood boil, but I held back. I took a deep breath and looked at Matthew again. "Is that true? You do not have a job?" He shrugged. "I lost the last one 2 months ago. I am looking, but it is not easy. Everyone wants experience in things I do not know how to do." "And what have you been spending your time on these last 2 months?" I asked in a firm voice. "Looking for work. Mom, I swear, I have sent out resumes. I have been to interviews. But nothing comes through." Jessica interrupted again. "That is why we need to stay here. We have nowhere else to go. And you live alone in this big house. I do not understand what the problem is." "The problem," I said, getting up from the chair and looking her straight in the eye, "is that you entered my house without my permission. The problem is that you treat me as if I am the intruder. The problem is that you do not have a shred of respect for me or for what is mine." She held my gaze with a cold smile. "Oh, please, do not play the victim. You should be grateful your son still remembers you. Because as unbearable as you are, I would not visit even if you paid me." Those words were like a punch to the gut. I looked at Matthew, waiting for him to say something, to shut her up, to defend me. But he just sat there, silent, staring at his coffee as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. And in that moment, I knew. I knew I would get no help from my own son. I knew he had chosen, and he had not chosen me. I turned and left the kitchen without another word. I went to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and stayed there, breathing slowly, feeling the tears wanting to come, but I did not let them. I was not going to cry. I was not going to give that woman the pleasure of seeing me broken. I took out my phone and called Carol. I needed to talk to someone. I needed someone to tell me I was not crazy, that I was not exaggerating. "Margaret?" she answered, her voice warm. "Are you back?" "Yes, Carol, I am back. But I need you to come over. Please." "What happened?" She sounded worried. "I cannot explain it over the phone. Just come. I need you." She did not ask any more questions. She told me she would be at my house in half an hour, and she hung up. I sat on the bed, staring at the locked door, listening to the voices of Matthew and Jessica in the living room. She was still talking loudly, complaining about everything, that the house was old, that the furniture was ugly, that the bathroom needed remodeling, and Matthew said nothing. He just listened. I felt a sadness so deep I could barely breathe. Was this how it was all going to end? After everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed for my son, this was how he was going to repay me? By letting his wife humiliate me in my own house? When the doorbell rang, I got up quickly and went to open it. It was Carol. She was holding a bag with pastries and had a worried look on her face. "What happened, Margaret?" she asked as soon as she walked in. I hugged her without saying anything, and she hugged me back, tight, without asking. We stood there in the entryway for a few seconds, and I felt that at least I had someone on my side. "Come on," I said. "Let's go to the kitchen. I will make you some tea." We walked to the kitchen, and when we entered, Jessica was still there, sitting at my table, painting her nails again. She looked up and glared at us. "Who is this?" she asked, without even a greeting. Carol looked at me, confused, but I touched her arm to calm her. "She is my friend," I answered Jessica coldly. "And she has more right to be here than you do." Jessica let out a fake laugh. "Oh, how funny. Now you are going to bring your little friends over to defend you? Pathetic." Carol took a step forward, but I stopped her. "She is not worth it," I whispered. "Let's go to the yard." We both went out to the yard and sat in the plastic chairs I had there. Carol looked at me, waiting for an explanation, and I did not even know where to begin. "Margaret, what is going on? Who is that woman?" "She is my daughter-in-law," I said in a tired voice. "Matthew's wife. They moved into my house while I was gone, and now they do not want to leave." Carol stared at me in silence, processing what I had just told her. I saw her expression change from confusion to indignation. She pressed her lips together and shook her head, disbelieving. "Are you telling me they came in without your permission?" she asked in a low, firm voice. "And Matthew let that woman talk to you like that?" I nodded without saying anything. The words were stuck in my throat. Carol took my hand in hers and squeezed it hard. "Margaret, this is not right. You cannot let them treat you like this in your own home. You have to put a stop to it. I know, Carol, but I do not know how to do it without everything exploding. He is my son. I do not want to lose him." She looked at me with those eyes full of wisdom that only come with age. "You already lost him, Margaret. The Matthew you raised would not let anyone disrespect you. That man in there is not your son anymore. He is her husband." Her words hurt because they were true. Matthew had changed since he married Jessica. He used to call more often, come to visit me. He would ask me how I was. But ever since she appeared in his life, everything was different. The visits became shorter, the calls more spaced out. And when he did come, she always found some excuse to criticize something. That my house was small, that my furniture was old, that I cooked with too much salt. At first, I thought she was just adjusting to her new life, that it was normal for him to put his wife first. But now I realized it was not adaptation. It was submission. Matthew had become someone I did not recognize. "I am not going to beg them to leave," I told Carol, my voice firm. "I am not going to yell or fight, but I am not going to let them keep disrespecting me either." "So, what are you going to do?" she asked. I was quiet for a few seconds, thinking. Looking at the plants I had watered that morning, feeling the warm sun on my face. And then I knew exactly what to do. "I am going to make their lives impossible," I said in a low voice. "I am going to make them regret ever setting foot in my house without permission. Not with shouting, not with fights, but with actions." I am going to show them that this house has an owner, and that owner is me. Carol looked at me with a mix of concern and admiration. Be careful, Margaret. That woman looks like she is capable of anything. I know. That is why I am not going to give her any reason to play the victim. Everything I do will be within my rights. This is my house, and I am in charge here. We stayed in the yard a while longer, drinking the peppermint tea I had made with the last of my mint leaves. We talked about other things, trying to distract ourselves. Carol told me about her grandchildren, about a neighbor who had fallen, about the daily life I had left behind for those 2 weeks. But my mind was elsewhere. I was planning every move. When Carol left, I went back into the house. Matthew was watching television in the living room. Jessica had gone out. He told me without me even asking. She went to the grocery store. I sat in the armchair across from him. We need to talk, I said. He turned off the television and looked at me with that scolded child face that irritated me so much now. Tell me, Mom, I want you to understand something very clearly, Matthew. This is my house. I paid for it. I take care of it. And as long as I live, no one is going to treat me like a stranger here. Did you hear me? He nodded. Yes, Mom. I talked to Jessica. I told her she has to be respectful. Oh, really? And what did she say? He averted his gaze. She said she was on edge, that it has been hard for her too, that she did not mean to disrespect you. Lies. I saw her. I heard everything she said. And she did it with full intention. Matthew sighed. Mom, please. We are going through a hard time. We just need a little time. Fine, I said, standing up. You will have time, but under my rules. And the first rule is this. My bedroom is mine. No one enters without my permission. Second, everything you use in this house, you leave clean and in its place. And third, respect. If your wife cannot respect me, then she does not stay here. Is that clear? He nodded in silence. I left the living room without waiting for an answer. I went straight to my room and took out an old box where I kept important papers. Inside were the deeds to the house, the payment receipts, everything that proved this property was mine. I checked it all carefully, making sure everything was in order. Then, I searched online on my phone. I wanted to know what my rights were. What could I legally do to get them out of here if necessary? And I found the answer. As the owner, I had every right to ask them to leave. But there was a process. I had to give them written notice, an eviction notice. That same afternoon, I went to an office supply store downtown. I bought padlocks, 5 padlocks with their keys. I also bought a folder and some paper. I was going to do everything right, everything legally. Nothing she could use against me. When I got back home, Jessica had returned. She was in the kitchen cooking something that smelled strong and unpleasant. I walked past without greeting her and went straight to my room. I closed the door and started writing. I wrote a formal letter addressed to Matthew and Jessica. I gave them 3 days to vacate the property. I explained that they had entered without my consent and that they had no lease agreement. Everything was worded calmly, without insults, without emotion, just facts. When I finished, I walked to the local library and printed 2 copies, one for each of them. I returned home and put them on the living room table, where they could not ignore them. That night, during the dinner I made just for myself, Matthew found the letters. I heard him talking to Jessica in low, surprised voices. Then he knocked on my bedroom door. Mom, can I come in? No, I answered from inside. Whatever you have to say, you can say it from there. Is this for real? He asked, his voice trembling. You are going to kick us out? It is for real. You have 3 days. Mom, please, we have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you entered without permission. Before you disrespected me. Before you let your wife treat me like trash. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then I heard his footsteps moving away. And then the voices. Jessica was screaming, furious. She said I was a bitter old woman, that I was going to regret this, that she was going to sue me for mistreatment. Matthew tried to calm her, but his voice sounded weak, defeated. I sat on my bed, listening to it all, and I did not feel guilt. I did not feel sadness. I just felt something like relief. For the first time in days, I had done something. I had taken control. The next morning, when I left my room, the house was silent. Matthew and Jessica were still asleep. I went to the kitchen and made my coffee, as always. But this time, when I opened the cupboard, I took out the padlocks I had bought. I started with the pantry. I took out everything that was mine and stored it in my room. I left only the things they had brought. Then I put the padlock on the pantry door. I did a similar thing with the cabinet, where I kept my good dishes, my pans, my quality pots. I left out only the basics, and I padlocked it. When I got to the refrigerator, I hesitated for a moment, but then I remembered how Jessica had used my milk without asking, how she had filled my fridge with her things without permission, so I took out everything that was mine, and I put a padlock on the refrigerator too. I was finishing when I heard footsteps. Matthew came out of his room and stood in the kitchen doorway, looking at the padlocks with a confused face. "Mom, what did you do?" "I protected what is mine," I replied calmly. "If you are going to be here, you will use only your things, not mine." "But how are we going to cook? How are we going to eat?" "That is your problem, Matthew, not mine." Matthew just stood there, staring at the padlocks as if he could not believe what he was seeing. He opened his mouth to say something, but closed it again. He did not know what to argue, because deep down, he knew I was right. This was my house, and if they wanted to stay, they were going to respect my things. Jessica came out minutes later, still in her pajamas, hair messy, and an angry look on her face. When she saw the padlocks, her expression changed from surprise to fury in a second. "What is this?" she yelled, pointing at the fridge. "Are you crazy? How are we supposed to store our food?" "Not my problem," I answered without getting upset. "You can buy a mini fridge if you want, or eat out, but my things are mine." She took a step toward me with clenched fists. "You cannot do this. It is inhumane. Matthew, say something to your mother. Tell her she is acting like a lunatic." Matthew just looked down. He said nothing, and that infuriated her even more. "You are useless," she yelled at him. "Your mother is humiliating you, and you just stand there like an idiot. Do something." I left the kitchen and went to the bathroom. I closed the door and splashed cold water on my face. I could hear her screaming from in there. Jessica was insulting, threatening, crying with rage. Matthew tried to calm her with soft words that were useless, and I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 72-year-old woman who had worked her whole life, a woman who had raised her son alone, a woman who did not deserve to be treated like this. I dried my face and left the bathroom. I walked through the living room without looking at them and went straight to my room. I locked the door and sat on the bed. I took out my phone and looked up the number for a lawyer a neighbor had recommended to me years ago. I dialed and waited. "Good morning," a professional voice answered. "Law offices of Thompson and Associates." "Good morning. I need to consult about an eviction. Do you have any availability today?" They gave me an appointment for that same afternoon. I hung up and took a deep breath. This was serious. There was no turning back now. The rest of the morning was tense. Jessica locked herself in the room she shared with Matthew and did not come out. He stayed in the living room, watching television without paying attention. I got ready, put on my best dress, the one I wore for important occasions. I combed my hair carefully and put on the earrings my husband had given me. I wanted to feel dignified. I wanted to remind myself who I was. Before leaving, I knocked on their door. "Matthew," I said, "I'm going out. I will be back in a few hours." "Where are you going?" he asked from inside. "I have an appointment." "That is all you need to know." I did not wait for an answer. I grabbed my purse and left the house. I walked to the bus stop, feeling the sun on my face. It was a beautiful day. The sky was clear, and there was a soft breeze moving the leaves on the trees. I sat on the bench to wait and closed my eyes for a moment. I thought about everything that had happened, about how my life had taken such a drastic turn in just a few days. But I also thought about what I was doing, and I knew it was the right thing. I was not being cruel. I was not being vengeful. I was just defending what was mine. The bus arrived, and I got on. I paid my fare and sat by the window. I watched the streets go by, the houses, the people walking with their normal lives, and I wondered how many of those people were also fighting silent battles. How many were also being disrespected in their own homes. I arrived at the law office half an hour later. It was a small but clean building in the center of the city. I went up the stairs to the second floor and knocked. A young secretary greeted me with a kind smile. "Mrs. Adler?" she asked. "Yes, that is me. Mr. Thompson is waiting for you. Please, come in." She led me to a small office where a man in his 50s was sitting behind a desk full of papers. He stood up when I entered and offered me his hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Adler. I am Mark Thompson. Please, have a seat." I sat across from him and explained the whole situation. I told him about my trip, the return, about finding Matthew and Jessica living in my house without permission. I told him about the humiliation, the insults, the contempt. He listened attentively, taking notes. "I understand," he said when I finished. "This is a clear case of occupation without consent. As the owner, you have every right to demand they vacate the property." "How long does that process take?" I asked. "It depends. If they refuse to leave voluntarily, we would have to file a formal lawsuit. That can take weeks, even months. But there is a faster way, which is an expedited eviction order. It is filed when there is conflict in the cohabitation and the owner feels threatened or disrespected in her own home. With the right evidence, a judge can order the eviction in a matter of days. What evidence do I need? Witnesses, if there are any. Text messages, recordings, anything that proves the mistreatment. I also need the deeds to the property and a signed statement from you explaining the facts. I have the deeds, and I have a witness. My friend Carol was present when Jessica insulted me. Perfect. We can start with that. I will prepare the documents today. You come back tomorrow to sign them, and we will file them with the judge. If all goes well, in 2 days, you will have the order." I felt an enormous relief. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You do not know how much this means to me. I understand your situation, Mrs. Adler, and believe me, you are doing the right thing. No one has the right to disrespect you in your own home, not even your son." I left the office feeling lighter. I had finally taken the definitive step. It was no longer just threats. It was no longer just padlocks. It was something real, something legal, something they could not ignore. I returned home on the afternoon bus. When I arrived, the door was open. I went in and found Matthew sitting in the living room with a worried look on his face. "Mom," he said, standing up, "we need to talk. There is nothing to talk about. Matthew, please, just hear me out." I stopped and looked at him. There was something in his expression I had not seen before. He looked scared. "Jessica is furious. She says she is going to call the police. She says you are mistreating her. Let her call whoever she wants. I have not done anything illegal. This is my house, and I have the right to protect my things. Mom, please. I do not want this to end badly. We are family. Family respects each other, Matthew. And you two have not respected me since you arrived. Give me one more chance. I promise I will talk to her. I will make her understand. You have had plenty of chances. And you wasted every single one." I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed and sighed deeply. I was tired. Not physically, emotionally. Tired of fighting. Tired of justifying myself. Tired of begging for respect. That night I did not eat dinner. I was not hungry. I just went to bed early and tried to sleep, but the noises in the house kept me awake. I heard Matthew and Jessica arguing in low voices. I heard footsteps, doors opening and closing, and at some point, I heard something that put me on alert. They were trying to force one of the padlocks. I got up silently and opened my door just a crack. I saw them in the kitchen, trying to break the padlock on the pantry with a screwdriver. Matthew held a flashlight while Jessica pried at it. I felt a rage I had not felt before. I left my room and turned on the kitchen light. They froze, like thieves caught in the act. "What do you think you are doing?" I asked in a cold voice. Jessica dropped the screwdriver. "We are hungry. You will not let us use anything. What do you expect us to do?" "I expect you to have respect. But I see that is impossible for you. Matthew tried to explain. Mom, we just wanted. Get out of my kitchen. Now. They did not move. Jessica looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. You are a cruel old woman. I do not know how Matthew can be the son of someone so evil. And I do not know how my son could marry someone as trashy as you. We stood there, staring at each other. Matthew was between us, not knowing what to do, and then Jessica took a step toward me. Jessica took a step toward me with her fists clenched and her jaw tight. For a moment, I thought she was going to hit me, but I did not back down. I stood firm, looking her straight in the eye, without fear, because I knew if I showed weakness, she would use it against me. Go ahead, I said in a calm voice. Touch me. Give me one more reason to call the police. She stopped. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. Her eyes shone with rage, but she knew I was right. Anything she did now would only worsen her situation. Matthew grabbed her arm. Come on. Jessica, it is not worth it. She shook him off roughly. Do not touch me. This is your fault. For being a coward. For not defending your wife. I am not attacking her, I said calmly. I am just protecting what is mine. If she cannot understand that, it is her problem, not mine. Jessica shot me one last look full of hatred and stormed out of the kitchen. Matthew stood there for a few seconds, staring at the floor, not knowing what to say. Go, Matthew, and take that screwdriver with you. The next time you try to force something that does not belong to you, I am calling the police. I do not care if you are my son. He picked up the screwdriver with trembling hands and followed Jessica out. I heard them arguing in the bedroom. Their voices were a constant murmur that lasted for hours. And I stayed in the kitchen, checking the padlocks to make sure they had not managed to damage any of them. Everything was fine. I went back to my room, and this time I put a chair against the door. I did not feel safe. Not in my own house. And that hurt me more than any insult. I could not sleep that night. I lay awake, listening to every noise, every creak of the wood, every step in the hallway. My mind would not stop racing. How far would they go? What else were they capable of doing? The next morning, I got up early, as always. I made my coffee in silence and went out to the yard. The cool morning air helped clear my head. I watered my plants, swept the fallen leaves, fixed some pots that were out of place. It was my routine. It was what kept me sane. Carol arrived shortly after noon. She knocked on the door, and when I opened it, she was holding a bag of food. I brought you lunch, she said with a smile. I know you have not been eating well, thank you. You do not know how much I needed to see you. We went into the kitchen, and she saw the padlocks. She shook her head sadly. Margaret, this is terrible. You cannot go on like this. I know. I went to a lawyer yesterday. I am going to file for an eviction order. Really? Carol asked. Really? I cannot take it anymore, Carol. I tried to be reasonable. I tried to talk. But they do not understand. They only understand when it hurts them. She put her hand on my shoulder. I am proud of you. I know it is not easy. But you are doing the right thing. We ate lunch together in the yard, far from the room where Matthew and Jessica were still holed up. We talked about everyday things, trying to distract ourselves. But I could not stop thinking about what was coming. When Carol left, I went back into the house. I had to go to the law office to sign the papers. I got ready again. I put on the same dress as yesterday because it was the only one that made me feel strong. I took my purse and left without telling anyone. At the office, Mr. Thompson already had everything prepared. He showed me the documents. He explained every point, every clause. I read everything carefully before signing. With this, Mrs. Adler, we can file the order tomorrow morning. The judge will review it, and if everything is in order, he will approve it that same day. Then an officer will come to deliver it personally. From that moment, they have 48 hours to vacate. And if they do not? I asked. Then the police intervene. But believe me, when they see the official order, most people leave. They do not want legal trouble. I signed all the papers with a steady hand. Every signature was one step closer to getting my peace back, to getting my house back, to getting my dignity back. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for helping me. It is my job, ma'am. But it is also the right thing to do. No one deserves to be mistreated in their own home. I left the office feeling like I had made the definitive decision. There was no turning back. In 2 days, 3 at most, they would be out of my house. When I got back, the house was silent. I thought maybe they had gone out, but when I passed their room, I heard low voices. They were there, planning something, probably. I went to the kitchen and unlocked my private pantry. I took out rice, beans, a little chicken I had saved. I cooked for myself alone. The smell filled the house, and I knew they were smelling it. I knew they were hungry, but I did not care. When I finished cooking, I served myself a plate and sat down to eat at the kitchen table. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, enjoying my food in my house, and I did not feel guilt. I did not feel pity. I just felt I was doing what I had to do. Matthew came out of the room as I was finishing. He stood in the kitchen doorway, looking at my plate with hungry eyes. "Is there anything for us?" he asked in a small voice. "No," I replied without looking at him. "There is a corner store. You can buy something there. Mom, we do not have any money." "That is not my problem, Matthew. You decided to stay here without my permission. Now you face the consequences. But we are your family. Family is earned with respect, not just blood." He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he asked something I was not expecting. "Why do you hate us so much?" I looked up and met his gaze directly. "I do not hate you, Matthew. I would hate you if I still cared about you. But I do not. I do not care if you are hungry. I do not care if you are uncomfortable. I do not care if you feel humiliated. Because I have felt all of those things since you arrived, and you did not lift a finger to stop it." His eyes filled with tears. "I am sorry, Mom. I am really sorry. Your apologies are too late, son. Far too late." He turned and went back to the room. I heard him talking to Jessica. She yelled something I did not understand. And then there was silence. I washed my plate, put the leftovers in a container, locked it, and locked everything up again. Every movement was a declaration. This is my house. These are my things. And you are not entitled to any of it. That night I slept a little better, knowing that the order would arrive at any moment, that soon this would all be over, that soon I would have my house back to myself. The next morning, Mr. Thompson called me early. "Mrs. Adler, I have good news. The judge approved the order. They are going to deliver the notice this afternoon." I felt a huge weight lift off my chest. "Thank you. Mr. Thompson, thank you so much. Be prepared for what comes." Sometimes people react badly when they receive these notices. If you feel you are in danger, call the police immediately. I will. Do not worry. I hung up and sat on my bed, breathing deeply. Today was the day. Today everything changed. I got ready with care. I put on my best clothes, did my hair, even put on a little lipstick. I wanted to be presentable when the officer arrived. I wanted Matthew and Jessica to see me as dignified, firm, unbreakable. I waited in the living room, sitting in my armchair, watching the time on the wall clock. Every minute seemed like an eternity. Matthew and Jessica had not left the room all day. They were probably hoping I would give in, that I would get tired of this silent war. But they were wrong. At 3 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I got up slowly and went to open it. It was a uniformed man with a folder in his hand. "Mrs. Margaret Adler?" he asked. "Yes, that is me. I have a court notice for Mr. Matthew Adler and Miss Jessica Valverde. Are they at the residence?" "Yes, they are here. Please come in." The officer entered, and I knocked on their bedroom door. "Matthew, Jessica, come out. There is someone here who wants to talk to you." The door opened slowly. Matthew came out first, his face confused. Jessica was behind him, scowling. "Who are you?" she asked when she saw the officer. "I am an officer of the civil court. I am here to serve you with an eviction order." Matthew and Jessica froze. The color drained from their faces. Jessica was the first to react, taking a step toward the officer with an incredulous expression. "What did you say? An order for what?" The officer held out the papers to them. "An eviction order issued by the civil court. The owner of this property, Mrs. Margaret Adler, has requested that you vacate the premises. You have 48 hours from this moment to leave the residence with all your belongings." Matthew took the papers with trembling hands. His eyes scanned the words, not really understanding what he was reading. Jessica snatched them from his hands and began to read aloud, becoming more and more agitated. "This cannot be legal. She cannot just kick us out like this. We are family." The officer maintained his professional tone. "Mrs. Adler is the sole registered owner of this property. You have no lease agreement or document that gives you the right to remain here. The law is on her side. If you do not comply with the order within the established time frame, a forced eviction will be carried out with police intervention." Jessica looked at me with a hatred so intense I could almost feel it physically. "You did this. You are putting us out on the street." "I did what I had to do to get my peace back," I replied calmly. "You had the chance to leave on good terms. You chose to stay and disrespect me. Now face the consequences." Matthew kept staring at the papers as if expecting the words to change. His face was a mask of shock and betrayal. "Mom, you cannot do this. We are your family. You stopped treating me like family the day you allowed your wife to insult me in my own house," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "The day you entered without permission. The day you made me feel like a stranger in the place I built with my own sweat," the officer interrupted. "If you have no further questions, I will leave. The papers have all the necessary information. If you require legal advice, you can consult with an attorney, but I recommend you comply with the order. Good day." He left the house, leaving a heavy silence behind. Matthew just stood there, holding the papers as if they were a death sentence. Jessica, on the other hand, began to pace, breathing heavily, trying to control her fury. "This is unbelievable. This is abuse. I am going to sue her. I am going to call a lawyer, and I am going to sue her for mistreatment, for familial neglect, for everything." "Go ahead," I said calmly. "My lawyer will be waiting for your call. In the meantime, you have 48 hours. I suggest you start packing." "We are not leaving," she said, crossing her arms. "You cannot force us. The police can, and they will if necessary. So you decide. You leave on your own 2 feet with some dignity, or you leave escorted by the police for all the neighbors to see. It makes no difference to me." Matthew finally spoke. His voice sounded broken. "Mom, please, give me a chance. Let's talk. We can fix this. There is nothing left to fix. Son, I have already made my decision. But we have nowhere to go. That is not my problem. You should have thought of that before." Jessica let out a bitter laugh. "You know what? You are right about one thing. You are cruel. You are a cruel, bitter old woman who is going to end up alone. And when you are on your deathbed, no one will be there to hold your hand. No one will cry for you because you pushed away your only family." Her words were meant to hurt me. They were meant to make me feel guilty, to make me doubt, but they did not work anymore. I had already cried all the tears I had. I had already felt all the pain I could feel. "I would rather die alone and in peace than live accompanied and humiliated," I replied. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have things to do." I turned and went to my room. I closed the door and sat on the bed. I could hear their agitated voices on the other side. Jessica was still screaming, blaming Matthew for everything. He tried to calm her down without success, and I just breathed deeply, feeling how every second brought me closer to my freedom. That afternoon, I called Carol and told her everything. She came over immediately, worried about how they might react. "Do you want me to stay with you tonight?" she asked. "I do not like you being alone with them, knowing they are desperate." "I will be fine," I told her. "But thank you for worrying. Margaret, these people are capable of anything. Be careful. I will. I promise if anything happens, I will call the police immediately." Carol stayed with me until it got dark. We drank tea in the yard, talking about everything except the situation. I needed a moment of normalcy, a breather before what was to come. When she left, I went back inside. The house was strangely quiet. Matthew and Jessica were in their room with the door closed. No voices. No movement. Just silence. I got ready for bed, but this time I locked the door and also put a chair under the handle. I did not feel safe. I did not know what they were capable of now that they felt cornered. The night passed slowly. I slept little, always alert to any noise, but nothing happened. When dawn broke, I got up tired, but relieved that it had passed without incident. I left my room and went to the kitchen. I made my coffee, as always, trying to keep my routine. But everything felt different. The air was heavy, dense, as if the house itself were waiting for something to explode. Matthew came out shortly after. He had deep dark circles under his eyes, and his face was haggard. He looked like he had not slept at all. He sat at the kitchen table and looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Please." "There is nothing to talk about, Matthew." "Yes, there is. Please, just hear me out for 5 minutes." I sighed and sat across from him. "You have 5 minutes." He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "I know I screwed everything up. I know I should have defended you from the beginning. I know Jessica crossed the line, and I was a coward for not putting her in her place. But Mom, please do not put us on the street. Give me one last chance. I swear things will change." "Things do not change, Matthew. People change. And you are not going to change because you do not want to. You chose your wife over your mother, and that is fine. It is your right. But I also have the right to choose myself, and that is what I am doing. But we are your family. Family is not just blood, son. It is respect. It is love. It is mutual care. And you gave me none of that." His eyes filled with tears. "If you kick us out, I will never forgive you. That is your decision. I have already made mine." He stood up from the table abruptly. "Fine. If that is what you want, fine. But do not expect me to come back. Do not expect me to call. Do not expect anything from me ever again. I never expected anything from you, Matthew, except respect, and you could not even give me that." He stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door. I heard him talking to Jessica, telling her to pack, that they were leaving, that they would never come back. And I stayed sitting in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for the son I lost. Relief for the peace I would soon regain. For the rest of the day, I heard them packing their things, drawers opening and closing, clothes being stuffed into bags. Abrupt, noisy movements. But they did not come out of the room. They did not talk to me. They did not look at me. I stayed in the yard most of the time, watering my plants, sweeping, tidying up, preparing myself mentally for the moment they would finally leave. When night fell, they were still there. The 48 hours were not up yet. They had until noon tomorrow. And I knew they were going to drag it out until the last second. They were going to make me suffer until the very end. I went to bed early, but I could not sleep. I heard them moving around the house. I heard their whispers. I heard their footsteps. And part of me was afraid they would try something, that they would break something, that they would hurt me in some way. But nothing happened. When dawn broke, I got up, my body aching from being so tense. Today was the day. Today the deadline was up. Today I got my house back. I woke up that morning with a strange feeling in my chest. It was the last day. At noon, the 48 hours would be up. And after that, if they were still here, I would have to call the police. Part of me hoped they would just leave without drama. But another part knew Jessica would not make it easy. I made my coffee in silence. The sun was just beginning to stream through the kitchen window, lighting up the plants in the yard. I sat down to drink my mug slowly, trying to calm my nerves. Today, it all ended. Today I got my peace back. I heard movement in the bedroom, heavy footsteps, the sound of something being dragged across the floor. They were awake, maybe packing the last of their things, or maybe planning something. I did not know what to expect from them anymore. Matthew came out first. He was carrying a box and glanced at me as he walked toward the door. He said nothing, not good morning, not goodbye. He just walked out and put the box in the car they had parked outside. He came back in and repeated the process several times. Every time he passed through the kitchen, he avoided my gaze. I just sat there, watching. I was not going to help them. I was not going to ask if they needed anything. I was not going to do anything that could be interpreted as weakness or regret. I just waited. Jessica appeared an hour later. Her hair was loose and messy, her face bare of makeup, and she had an expression of exhaustion mixed with rage. She saw me sitting in the kitchen and stopped in the doorway. "I hope you are happy," she said in a cutting voice. I hope it is worth it, being alone in this cold, old house. I did not answer her. I just looked at her in silence, drinking my coffee. My silence infuriated her more than any words. Do you know what the saddest part is? She continued. That you are going to die here alone, and no one is going to come to your funeral because you pushed away the only person who still cared about you. Matthew never cared about me, I finally said in a calm voice. He cared about having a place to live for free. There is a difference. She let out a bitter laugh. Think whatever you want. It does not matter anymore. We are leaving. And believe me, we are never coming back, not even if you beg us. I do not plan on begging anyone for anything. You can leave in peace. She turned and left the kitchen. I heard her yelling at Matthew, telling him to hurry up, that she wanted to get out of this house as soon as possible. He mumbled answers I could not hear. The hours passed. They kept taking things out. Boxes, bags, clothes. I was surprised how much they had accumulated in such a short time. Or maybe they had brought more than I thought. Maybe they had always planned to stay for a long time. At 11 in the morning, Carol knocked on the door. I opened it, and she came in with a bag of fresh pastries and a worried smile. How are you? She asked, hugging me. Okay. They are almost gone. They are taking their things out now. Do you want me to stay with you? Yes. I would like you to be here when they leave. We sat in the living room, watching in silence as Matthew went back and forth with his things. Jessica came out with a bag full of clothes and looked at us with contempt. How convenient that you have your little friend here. You need witnesses for your victory, do not you? Carol stood up. Young lady, I suggest you leave with what little dignity you have left. You have done enough damage. Jessica was about to say something, but Matthew grabbed her arm. Let's go. We are almost done. She shook him off, but followed him outside. We heard them arguing by the car, their voices carried inside, loaded with frustration and anger. Are you sure about this, Margaret? Carol asked in a low voice. Because once they leave, there might be no turning back. I am sure. More sure than I have been in a long time. She nodded and squeezed my hand. Then I support you. No matter what. At noon sharp, Matthew came in one last time. He looked around the house, as if searching for something he had forgotten, or maybe saying goodbye. He stopped in front of me. His eyes were red, swollen. He had been crying. This is a mistake, Mom. Someday you are going to regret this. If I regret it, it will be my problem, not yours. Just like that? You are not even going to say goodbye to me? Goodbye, Matthew. Take care of yourself. He waited a few seconds, maybe believing I would change my mind at the last moment, that I would hug him and tell him to stay. But I did not. I sat there, firm, unmoving. Fine, he said finally, if that is what you want. Goodbye, Mom. He walked out of the house without looking back. I heard the car door slam. I heard the engine start, and I heard them drive away down the street until the sound disappeared completely. I sat there in the silence. Carol was by my side, saying nothing, just keeping me company. And then I felt something I did not expect. It was not joy. It was not sadness. It was relief. A profound relief, like when you take off a shoe that has been hurting you all day. They are gone, I said in a low voice. They are gone, Carol repeated. How do you feel? I thought for a few seconds. Tired, but free. She hugged me, and we stayed like that for a long time. When she pulled away, she looked at me with those understanding eyes. Do you want me to help you clean? She asked. Yes, please. We got up and went to the room where they had slept. When I opened the door, I could not believe what I saw. They had left everything thrown around. The bed unmade, dirty clothes on the floor, food wrappers, empty bottles. They had left it a complete disaster, as a final show of contempt. Look at this, Carol said, indignant. They did not even have the decency to leave the room clean. I felt the anger rising again, but I controlled it. I was not going to let this affect me. They were gone. They had no more power over me. It is okay, I said. We will clean it, and that is that. I want to erase any trace that they were ever here. We spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning. We washed the sheets, mopped the floor, aired out the room. Carol worked beside me without complaint, helping me reclaim my space. By 5 in the afternoon, when we finished, the room no longer smelled like them. There were no traces left. It was just an empty room waiting to be filled with good things again. Thank you, Carol. I do not know what I would do without you. That is what friends are for, she replied with a smile. Do you want me to stay for dinner? No, thank you. I think I need to be alone for a while. I need to get used to the silence again. She understood. She hugged me one last time and left, promising to come back the next day. When I closed the door behind her, I stood in the middle of the living room, looking at my house. My house. Silent. Empty. But mine. I walked slowly through each room. I touched the walls. I opened the windows. I breathed in the clean air that came in. And for the first time in days, I smiled. I went to the kitchen and took off all the padlocks. I did not need them anymore. I opened the pantry, the refrigerator, the cabinets. Everything was available again. Everything was mine again, without restrictions. I made my favorite dinner, chicken soup with vegetables, the kind I used to make when my husband was alive. The kind I had not made in a long time because it was too much for one person. But tonight, I did not care. I cooked calmly, enjoying every step. The smell filled the house, replacing any trace of what had happened. I sat down to eat dinner alone at my table, and for the first time, I did not feel lonely. I felt accompanied by my own presence, by my own strength, by everything I had fought for to get here. After dinner, I washed the dishes and went out to the yard. The sky was clear, full of stars. I sat in my usual chair and looked up. I thought about my husband, about how he would be proud of me for not letting myself be trampled, about how he would have supported me in every decision. I thought about Matthew, about the boy he was and the man he became. I felt sadness for what we could have been and were not, but I did not feel regret. I did what I had to do. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Carol. You did the right thing. I am proud of you. I smiled and replied, thank you for being there. I stayed in the yard until the night chill made me go inside. I locked everything calmly, turned off the lights, and went to my room. I got into my bed and closed my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply, without startling, without fear, without padlocks on the door, because my house was my refuge again, and no one was ever going to take it away from me again. I woke up to the sunlight streaming through my window. I had not set an alarm, but my body woke up on its own, as always. It was 6 in the morning, but this time, something was different. The silence of the house was not heavy or uncomfortable. It was peaceful. It was mine. I stayed in bed for a few more minutes, just breathing, feeling the clean sheets, listening to the birds singing outside. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel that knot in my stomach when I woke up. There were no voices to fear, no scornful looks waiting for me. There was just me and my home. I got up slowly and went to the kitchen. I made my coffee calmly, enjoying every step. I heated the water, put in the filter, poured the exact amount of sugar I liked. Everything as I had always done it, but now with a sense of freedom I had forgotten. I went out to the yard with my steaming mug. My plants looked greener, more alive. Or maybe it was me who saw them differently. I sat in my chair and took the first sip of the day. The coffee was perfect. The cool morning air caressed my face. And I realized something important. I had not lost anything. I had gained everything. I spent the morning tidying up the house. Not because it was dirty, but because I wanted to fill it with my energy again. I moved some furniture around. I put fresh flowers on the living room table. I opened all the windows to let the sun in. I wanted every corner to remember that this house had an owner, and that owner was me. Mid-morning, the doorbell rang. It was Carol, as she had promised. She brought fresh bread and that warm smile I needed so much. Good morning, Margaret. How did you sleep? Like I have not slept in years, I replied with a genuine smile. We went into the kitchen, and I made more coffee. We sat down to have breakfast together, talking about simple things. About the weather, about the neighbors, about the flowers that were growing in her garden. It was a normal, everyday conversation, and it was exactly what I needed. Did you hear anything from Matthew? She asked carefully. I shook my head. No. And I do not expect to. And how do you feel about that? I thought for a few seconds. Sad, I guess, but not regretful. There is a difference. She nodded. It is normal to feel sad, Margaret. He is your son. But you did the right thing. No one has the right to treat you badly, not even your own family. I know. And for the first time in a long time, I put myself first, and I do not feel guilty about it. You should not. That is not selfishness. That is self-respect. We finished breakfast, and Carol offered to help me in the garden. We spent the rest of the morning pruning, watering, fixing the plants that had been neglected. Working with my hands in the dirt made me feel connected to something bigger. It reminded me that life goes on, that things grow, that after the drought comes the rain. When Carol left at noon, I was alone again. But this time the solitude did not weigh on me. It was company. It was peace. I made a simple lunch and sat down to eat, looking out the window at the yard. Every bite tasted better than the last. After washing the dishes, I sat in the living room with a book I had left unopened for months. I opened it and started to read. The words flowed easily. The story captivated me. It had been so long since I had time to read. It had been so long since my mind was calm enough to enjoy something so simple. I read for hours, lost in another story, in another world. And when I looked up, I realized it was already getting dark. The day had passed peacefully, without upsets, without conflict, just me, my house, and my peace. That night, as I was making dinner, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but finally, I did. Hello? There was silence on the other end. Then I heard breathing, and then a voice I knew all too well. Mom. It was Matthew. I did not respond. I just waited for him to say what he had to say. I wanted to know if you were okay. I am fine, Matthew. Better than before. Another long silence. Mom, I am sorry. I am really sorry. I should not have let things get that far. It is a little late for apologies. Do not you think? I know. But I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that I regret it. That I understand I ruined everything. I stayed quiet, feeling the emotions rising. But I was not going to let myself be swayed. I was not going to give in just because he felt guilty. Where are you now? I asked. With a friend of Jessica's. He let us stay for a few days while we look for something. I am looking for a job. For real this time. I am glad to hear that. Mom, do you think you could ever forgive me? I do not know, Matthew. I do not know. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry. And that even though I am angry, you are still my mom, and you are still my son. But that does not mean I am going to let myself be disrespected again. I know. I will not bother you anymore. I just wanted to hear your voice. Take care, Matthew. You too, Mom. He hung up, and I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling a mix of emotions. Sadness, relief, hope, but above all, peace. Because I knew I had done the right thing, that I had not given in, that I had kept my dignity. I finished making dinner and sat down to eat alone. And this time, I did not feel sad. I felt whole, because I understood something fundamental. Loneliness is not the same as being alone. Loneliness hurts. Being alone can be a blessing. After dinner, I went back out to the yard. The sky was cloudy, and it smelled like rain. I sat in my chair and waited. A few minutes later, the first drops began to fall. Then came the heavy rain, beating on the roof, soaking the earth, filling the air with that fresh smell I loved so much. I sat there under the eaves, protected from the rain but feeling its coolness. And I thought about everything that had happened, about how I had fought, about how I had suffered, but also about how I had won. I had not yelled. I had not begged. I had not lost my dignity. I had only set boundaries. I had only defended what was mine. And that was enough. My phone vibrated with a message. It was Carol again. Is it raining over there too? I love these afternoons. I smiled and replied, Yes, it is beautiful. She answered quickly, I will come by tomorrow with more bread, and we can drink tea and watch the rain if it continues. I would love that. I put the phone away and went back to watching the rain. I thought about my life, about everything I had built, about everything I had lost, and about everything I had gained. I had lost my son, it is true, but I had gained my peace. I had gained my dignity. I had gained my home back. And if Matthew ever came back, it would be different. Because now he knew that I was not someone who could be trampled on, that I had boundaries, that I deserved respect. The rain kept falling, and I kept sitting there, in my house, in my yard, in my peace. A 72-year-old woman who had learned the most important lesson of all, that respect is not pleaded for, it is demanded. That self-love is not selfishness, it is survival. That being alone is not a punishment, it is a choice. And that my home is the place where there is respect. And whoever does not understand that stays outside. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. The air smelled like wet earth, like new beginnings, like second chances, not for them. For me. I got up and went into the house. I closed the patio door calmly. I turned off the lights one by one, and I went to my room. I lay down in my bed and looked at the ceiling. I could hear the rain tapping against the window. It was a calming sound, a sound that reminded me that after the storm, there is always calm. And I was already calm. I closed my eyes and let sleep overcome me. And for the first time in weeks, I had no nightmares. I had no worries. I just had peace. Because this house was mine. This life was mine. And no one was ever going to take it away from me again. Tomorrow would be another day. Maybe Matthew would call again. Maybe not. Maybe someday we could reconcile. Or maybe not. But that did not keep me up at night anymore. Because I had learned something it took me 72 years to understand. I did not lose anything. I just moved away from those who did not know how to stay, and that was not a loss. It was my most silent victory.